So I just want to know how, to what extent students of NAIT can make a change in Calvin. So if like it's like something really big, will students not be able to do that, or they will be hindered by President Leroy. So
So the Roy is a really big problem in our country. Okay, so basically, you want to understand like what the nature of student senate is, what its current influence it has on its government. Student senate is, if you look at it, actually a student club. It's a student club under the student life office, and which is led by John Britton and Paula Anglin. It's a club, but the thing that makes it distinct from every other club is that it is the only club that is accountable. No, it doesn't. Don't say that, Alden. Alden, Jovianus, Alden Hartopo, Chimes editor. No, okay. So, it's the only club that's accountable to students. And that is the thing that makes it distinct from everything else. And it claims to be the club that oversees the spending of student orgs. And it claims to be the club that represents the interests of students to the administration. Let me give you some examples of tangible things Student Senate has done for the student body. So, when I talked to some of the previous senators, they told me there was a time when a discussion about spring break arose. Students felt that spring break was too short. And when they talked about it and looked into it really well, they actually agreed with them. And as a result, they brought it up to the administration, they brought it up to Faculty Senate, and Faculty Senate actually made a decision. And they thanked Student Senate for their opinion, and they made that change. Spring break was extended last year, thanks to what Student Senate did. Another thing they've been working on now is they're trying to extend library hours, and they're trying to make Johnny's a more hospitable place. So Johnny's has been approved, and the budget has put money for them, and Johnny's is going to make some renovations over summer, along with bringing up some student artwork from Dialogue. And one really good example of change that Student Senate did in the past, I think this was in the 80s. Student Senate actually came up with the idea to make chapel mandatory at Calvin. If you ask your friends at other Christian colleges, like what's the difference between Calvin and other Christian colleges, it's like Calvin has like a good sense, a good policy of chapel. They didn't make it mandatory. And this was actually a tangible change brought about by Student Senate in the 80s. And that's a part of our heritage that we don't even remember. And I think that it's really important for us to look back and remember what our predecessors did and build upon their heritage. So I hope I answered your question, and I'm open to any more questions that anyone else may have. So, okay, so the question that was asked is, isn't it redundant that each dorm already has its own leadership when, what's the purpose of having Senate when each dorm already has a president and an executive team and a leadership, right? I think that's a really good question as well, and I asked that same question. When I talked to my friends in Biola, on the other side of the US, and I asked them about their student senate, their structure is a bit different, and they actually have they have the student senate executive team, and they also have student senate representatives. So the student senators, the executive team is like what our senate is. It's a small team of people that make decisions for the student body. The representatives are actually pretty interesting. They're an interesting concept that Calvin has not tested out yet or implemented before. It's a concept whereby they try and get as much representatives as possible, and representatives not just by location, but also by vocation. And these representatives actually do the legislative part of government. So as we can see, in normal government, there's the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. But in Calvin, we only have the executive. The legislative is left mainly to the faculty. In Biola, on the other hand, they have a student element of legislation. So that makes it different. So how does this relate to presidents in the norms? I believe that what Moses asked was right. And there is room to discuss like what sort of other ways can we make student government more effective at Calvin College. Because right now, each senator is representing 267 students, and there's this vibe that they're very aloof, there's a huge distance between them, and that they don't really know what the interests of the students are. So maybe, I'm considering, opening up discussion about involving the presidents of every dorm, or making senators, a dorm level thing. Because even in normal politics, we can see that, like election areas are by wards, are by geographic location, and I think Calvin should consider that as well.